War das ja hier, das hier, der Plus, oder?
Das,
Oh, ne? Okay, super. Dann geht's.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you all for joining. So far, we tried to stick to the plan that I sent around. So I'll open with a rather long opening. Then we hand over to Louis, then Dirk, and then Anika. Then I have a few questions, or you can respond to each other. I do 1, 2, 3 questions, and we open up for the audience for a Q&A. Maybe try to mute if you're not speaking to avoid background noises.
Okay. Ja. Ich bin jetzt schon relativ nah drin. Also, ja, das ist nichts für Bauern aus Ostwestfalen. So.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck. I try to get us through this. Of course.
Yes.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session, Teaching Silos to Dance, Sustainability in Public Administration, in which we will explore the role of public administration in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. More specifically, we will focus on the challenge of implementing these universal, indivisible goals within the departmental structures and the resulting division of labor that characterizes public administration. To shed some light on these challenges, we have invited 3 renowned speakers with ample of experience, and those are in order of their presentations. First, Professor Dr. Louis Mullerman was a member and currently Vice Chair of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration, visiting professor at Leuven University, senior fellow at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and research associate at Wageningen University. And he also works at the European Commission in Brussels as the coordinator of the Environmental Implementation Review and Greening the European Semester. I would also like to plug his book here, Meta Governance for Sustainability, which I think is a must-read for creative bureaucrats in the area of sustainability. Our second speaker, Mr. Dirk Meyer, the Director General for the Central Functions Administration, Budget, Research and Digitalization at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. In his role, he oversees the daunting effort of the German federal government to make the entire federal public administration climate neutral until 2030. Then our third speaker is Ms. Anika Lindblom, the Secretary General of Finland's National Commission on Sustainable Development, a multi-stakeholder partnership forum led by the Prime Minister. And in that position, she leads the coordination of the national implementation of Agenda 2030 in Finland. She also serves as president of the European Sustainable Development Network and as head of the unit for international and EU affairs in the Finnish Ministry of the Environment. So with these 3 distinguished speakers, we would like to proceed as follows in this session. I will first take a few minutes to set the stage and then give the floor to the speakers for some short inspirational talks about their experiences and insights. And following that, the speakers will have the opportunity to ask questions to each other and comment. I will have a few questions to further tease out the topic. And then we hope to have ample of time and plenty of questions from the audience. So please post your questions in the Mentimeter tool. Directly after this session, there will also be a workshop moderated by my colleague Julia Rusch, where participants can further discuss their own experiences with this topic among each other and learn. So please check the festival website for that. Now, first, let me go back. Let me go back almost 5 years, or to be more precise, 5 years and 4 days. That is to the 25th of September 2015. That day, which was actually a beautiful early autumn day in New York, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution with the exciting bureaucratic title A/Res/70/1 and the inspirational subheading Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. At the core of this 2030 agenda are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or in short, SDGs. These goals are further specified in 169 targets, and the progress towards achievement is measured by over 200 indicators. So this adoption in autumn 2015, 5 years and 4 days ago, of the SDGs was a big happening. We had heads of state in New York, Hollywood celebrities, prominent environmental human rights activists, NGOs, diplomats, the international media. Those 17 colorful square icons that are now everywhere, representing those 17 SDGs, were projected at the main headquarters of the UN in New York, and have since become the highly recognizable, visible, and colorful brand identity of this ambitious sustainable development agenda. However, not visible were the bureaucrats, neither those in the UN system that were crucial and essential in the long process from the Rio+20 conference in 2012 in negotiating and shaping those global goals, nor were those bureaucrats in the member states of the UN who are crucial for the implementation of those goals. So if we go back to paragraph 55 of this agenda resolution, I quote, it says, each government will also decide how these aspirational and global targets should be incorporated in national planning processes, policies, and strategies, end quote. Thereby the resolution places the brunt of responsibility on member states, government, and their bureaucratic apparatus, or their public administration, for the implementation of the goals. But there is a challenge in that, and that is that the organizational logic of the SDGs does not match the organizational structures of public administration. Again, a quote from paragraph 55 of the resolution, the SDGs and targets are integrated and indivisible, global in nature, and universally applicable, end quote. So on the one hand, these SDGs are integrated and indivisible. They're also highly connected. There's some exciting research, primarily pioneered by the Stockholm Environment Institute and the International Science Council, looking at the interconnectedness of the goals and how certain goals, achievements in certain goals, have positive synergies towards other goals, whereas working on some other goals could hamper or cause friction, again, with goals. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, governments are generally structured in rather static departmental institutions. They organize their work, and I'm quoting here a bit from Louis Mullerman's article, by dividing complex problems, and the SDGs certainly are a complex problem or a complex challenge, into more simple partial problems, which are dealt with by separate sectoral or functional bureaucratic entities, the so-called silos. And it's exactly this, the role of public administration organized in silos in implementing the integrated, indivisible, interconnected global goals. That's the context of the following 3 short presentations by our distinguished speakers. And then without further ado, and if technology allows, I would like to give the floor, and the pun of the dance floor will come back later on, so I leave it out for now, to our first speaker, Louis Mullerman. Please, Louis, you have the floor.
I can't hear him.
No, me neither.
There goes half a minute of my time already. I'm so sorry.
Now we can hear him.
You can hear me now. Okay. Again, so thanks for inviting me to say something about a topic that everybody seems to dislike, silos. Silos seem the opposite of what we need when we try to implement the 17 SDGs, because the goals are inherently linked with each other. And silos are responsible for the bad image of public administration, for its being fat and slow and inefficient and untransparent. The COVID-19 pandemic has to some extent revitalized the image of the public sector. We now realize that public administration is still able to take drastic measures when needed, at least in many countries. It can still be strong and agile and effective, but I'm not sure whether this positive image will last very long, because over the last decades, the new public management movement has weakened public administration in many countries in Europe and across the globe. According to the economist Maria Mazzucato, this has resulted in a general undervaluing of the public sector and its ability to create public value. New public management has many mantras which have infiltrated our brains, although we know that they are at least partially dangerous nonsense. Less is more and best practices are examples. But one of the most powerful mantras is break down the silos. Breaking down the silos suggests that governments function better when they get rid of the borders between institutions and policy areas or functional entities. It is a philosophy which is the opposite of Max Weber's idea that governments function best with breaking down problems into small pieces and establishing separate institutional entities to deal with them. I'm not defending Weber's model as the best practice, because I don't believe in the theory of best practices, and I do see the need to work better across institutional silos. Lack of policy coherence, of policy integration, is one of the main causes of implementation gaps, and we cannot achieve the SDGs without policy coherence. What we need, according to my experience and research at subnational and national and European and UN level, is contextualized approaches. We need pluralism. As the sociologist Ulrich Beck said, our world has become so complex that we cannot afford to say it is either or, but it should be and. We cannot risk betting everything on the wrong horse. In addition to the problem of dogmatism, breaking down the silos is also neglecting the virtues of silos. Silos ensure structure, legitimacy, responsibility, accountability, predictability, and of course, I'm aware of the problems caused by inefficient siloed bureaucracy. When you have over 50 ministries and 400 government agencies in a country, as not so long ago in Sri Lanka, it makes sense probably to break some silos and create larger entities. But if you have only 10 or 11 ministries, it's a different story. To analyze what is happening and what works where and why, I like to work with three basic governance styles and their combinations, because they're also culturally very meaningful. Hierarchy, like in Germany and Austria, appreciates silos because they provide structure. Market governance, as in Anglo-Saxon countries, but also in some other European countries, likes breaking down the silos. Network governance, favored in the Netherlands and in Scandinavian countries, preaches dialogue across sectors, but is sometimes stuck in endless talks. And I think that a better approach is creating a situational and flexible combination of the three classical approaches. And this situational and dynamic mixing is called governance of governance or meta-governance. In a metaphor, my co-writer Ingeborg Niestroy and I call this teaching silos to dance. It refers also back to the famous 2001 book Teaching the Elephant to Dance by James Belasco. Teaching silos to dance implies keeping structures where needed, bringing dynamics and flexibility in where possible, and creating spaces for reflection and dialogue. It is also a theory of change. I'm convinced that taking this as a new way of thinking, we will gradually create better performing public administration and governance with better policies which are better implemented. I'm currently developing also this idea into a training course which will include a lot of co-creation because we all have the solutions in-house. We know them. It's not rocket science. But it may be difficult because of vested interests in our organizations and of belief systems, of our own mindsets. And mindsets can be very stubborn. For example, although there is sufficient evidence about the ineffectiveness of breaking down physical walls and creating large open workspaces, and we know how it decreases motivation, effectiveness, and concentration, there still is this efficiency movement around which only thinks about saving money. And we know it doesn't work, but those in charge sometimes still believe in it because of the financial aspect. I think it is worthwhile to keep or even bring back the values of old school silos. They bring identification, social contacts, direct feedback, and other things that account for a learning environment. So let's invest in finding out what really bothers us about silos and how to overcome this. Let's also distinguish between political, institutional, and mental silos. Mental silos are maybe the most important, and these we have to break, not by destroying them, but by making them dance, making them fluid, making them connect. I said earlier that besides combining approaches, making them fit in their context is very important. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions for the SDGs. And this also means that silos may need to learn to dance in different ways in different countries. Maybe in Austria it's the waltz, in Spain the paso doble or the flamenco, and in Poland the polonaise. I don't know, Anika, what is the national dance of Finland. In Brussels at the European Commission, I have organized since 2015 a series of panel discussions with a live band, with live music, and sometimes a real dancing after party. The events are close enough to the Commission's internal culture to be acceptable, just acceptable, but different enough to energize panelists and participants to co-create something really new. These events bring together people from very different sectors who normally never meet. And this is important because in every organization, innovative solutions will exist which you have never heard of. You need to meet these people, invite them to come, tell their stories, or organize an internal study visit and ask them why and how did you make your silos dance. Finally, your boss, our bosses, may ask, why is this now important? Can't we wait until next year? Why is this now an urgent thing? And the easy answer is that bridging silos is about implementing SDG target 17.14.1 on policy coherence for sustainable development. Since this year, there is a composite UN indicator for this with a methodology agreed by the UN member states in the spring. And the UN plans at the moment to ask all countries to do a self-assessment based on the indicator in this autumn. In addition, also the OECD has adopted detailed guidance on policy coherence for sustainable development. So I would say, yes, it is urgent, it can be done, it has to be done, and policy coherence is a big enabler for the SDGs. I'm adding with a positive note, teaching silos to dance is possible, but it needs focus and willingness and courage. We should learn from good examples, and they exist in every organization. Can be replicated successes, can we maybe create communities which give people the encouragement and support to try new ways of collaboration? My last words are affirmative. Yes, we can. Of course we can. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was Louis Mullerman. A very good opening of this session. I'm sure there will be already questions coming in. I'm sure the other panelists have comments. However, to not get the technology completely confused in this online format, we'll move all the questions to the end of the session and now move on to our second speaker, Mr. Dirk Meyer. Mr. Dirk Meyer, the Director General for Central Functions, Administration, Budget and Research and Digitalization at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment. Mr. Meyer, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, my camera seems to be not focused enough, but I don't know how to do that at the moment. So I just try to continue. Yes, Mr. Meuleman, Mrs. Lindblom, Mr. Sondermann, thank you very much being here. When being asked for an impulse on the topic, teaching the silos to dance, of course, I got a smile first on my face, because I imagined in my ministry, on a banquet, my colleagues and employees of the ministries being in a tango waltzer or things like that. Especially in Corona times, it's hard to imagine at the moment. But of course, it is a very serious topic. And when you start thinking about it, and if you think about dancing, you know that it has to do with connecting, with being together, with cooperating, with communicating. And therefore, the topic is quite clear on top of the agenda. What I would like to impulse now is to bring together dancing the silos in the SDG number 13, namely the climate action, and start with a concrete example we have and try to push at the moment in the German administration. Of course, we have the classical silos also in the German federal government of different ministries and different institutions. On the other hand, we have the strong SDG, the climate action, the SDG number 13, which forces us to construct a climate neutral federal government administration. This is only one aspect, but it is a very important aspect for us. We have a long history in this SDG, and of course, the final point was the legally binding since 2019, almost a year ago, within the Federal Climate Change Act. It says that the climate neutral government has to be achieved until 2030 in order to lead by example, as the Act aims for a climate neutral economy and society in 2050. As we know, progress in this political field started slowly. It speeds up now, but in some we see that we have a few real action despite good efforts and progress in single ministries. My thesis now is a program for a group of ministries with a long-term vision, or to stick to the image of dancing, a choreography does not work on its own. It needs permanent assistance as well as stimulus and motivation by a dancing teacher when practicing, so that in the end, the group knows the performance in its sleep. So everything Mr. Meuleman already put with courage and ambition. When we talk about the dance, we see, first of all, climate neutral government in 2030 is a very ambitious target, and it is a big transformation within more than 100 institutions, immediate administration on federal level, even around 900 institutions taking indirect administration into account. So it's a real big group going on the dance floor. So we conclude that a coordinator is necessary to address this challenge, this big challenge, to guide through this transformation process and to teach how the silos could dance together. What about the dancing teacher? Within the BMU, the ministry I'm working in, the Ministry for the environment, nature conservation, and nuclear safety. Within the BMU, we have a coordination unit office formed for the climate neutral federal administration. And we established that in the beginning of this year. We just had the internal inauguration this morning. This unit will, that's very important, not write the plans like the old master plans in the old days. It will not tell each ministry what to do or waiting for action and control. What we need is a different new approach. We need an approach that actually is going on the dance floor. First, we need communication, communication, communication. It means that we have to set up a new narrative that symbols inclusion, hashtag gemeinsam wirksam, as well as highlights that open minds and new ideas are welcome. Second, this coordination office function is the function of a facilitator or a catalyst. And third, we have to work with new designs and new thinking methods. These methods have to enable knowledge and experience in a manifold way across ministries, and by setting up cross-sectional innovation teams that work on these new measures. We are setting up these now. We have the official start of the whole program on the 9th of October. Of course, we are using digital tools to collaborate, and we hope to unlock by this way much more creativity that we have on normal projects. So all institutions are involved in designing concrete measures. That means that the employees have to act as multiplicators within their own organizations, and they all write together the choreography. They know it better and they teach easier. Last but not least, as this is a legal binding goal, we will also showcasing the need for action due to more pressure coming in, as we talk, for instance, about Fridays for Future. Currently, as I said, the starting phase of the unit, the starting phase just getting up, and we are forming now the teams on the board and focus the whole program. To lead by example, to have climate neutral federal government institutions by 2030 will not be a single dance, that's quite clear. It will be a long night of several performances, probably without any breaks, but sure to have great dancers in our side. And I doubt that these dances will, with many dancers, will be in perfect harmony. So we will have confrontations, we will have discussions, we will have conflicts about interests, but we still hope that a dancing floor is the ground where we could inspire each other and focus together on this target of a climate neutral administration in federal government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dirk Meyer, for this very concrete example of a very ambitious effort to make the silos dance. Then, without further ado, we move up north to Finland, maybe one of the few places in Europe where we can actually still dance at the moment, given all the corona restrictions. Anika, Lindblom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ruben, and many thanks for inviting me to this very interesting event. I'm one of the big fans of Louis and Inge's studies on breaking the silos and making the silos dance, and try to implement that also in our own country. And yeah, it has been such a journey. I can tell some insights about that in the upcoming few minutes. So as I was introduced, I have basically two hats. I'm the Secretary General of the National Commission, and in that role I'm working very closely with the Prime Minister's Office for Sustainable Development. And then I'm Head of Unit for International Affairs in the Ministry of the Environment, where I'm of course looking forward to advancing the environmental agenda. So I have to break silos in my own head, depending where I'm working and with whom I'm talking with, and that's a good exercise. And I would say that it is not that difficult once you understand that actually bringing in more perspectives makes your life much more easier. And of course, I sometimes find myself maybe promoting the environmental aspect too much when I'm speaking as the Secretary General, where I should be more general, sustainable development. But on the other hand, I feel that this is also my strength, that I know something a bit better than some other issues. So it's not either or, it's and, as Louis said. Louis asked about the Finnish dance, and I would maybe propose here the Finnish Tango, which is melancholic and slow, but maybe a bit less passionate than the Argentinian one that is very popular at least in the countryside of Finland. So maybe before I start, I would also like to say that the National Commission on Sustainable Development took part also a few years ago in the exercise of the Finnish Innovation Front Sitra on silo breakers. So we were one of the silo breakers, and we took concrete examples of issues where we felt that where we need to break the silos, and that was quite a nice exercise. We worked together with sustainable development focal points from all different line ministries, and maybe that brought something new to our minds at that time. I also liked this categorizing or thinking silos around political, mental, and institutional ones. And I sort of try to put that categorizing into the Finnish context. So what would it mean in Finland when we talk about political silos, mental silos, and institutional silos? So if we first take the political silos, of course the essence is how to make the political silos to dance, is to build beyond government terms and to avoid politicizing sustainable development discourse. These have been the lessons learned from Finland, I would say. If we first take this long-term building beyond government terms thinking and connect it to the political silo thinking, it would mean in Finland, in our context, that our National Commission has now functioned for almost 28 years with a Prime Minister leading the work. And we have had during these 28 years over 10 governments, over 10 Prime Ministers from different political parties who have led the work, who have taken the leadership role in the Commission for Sustainable Development in Finland. And also we have had sustainable development strategies that have been endorsed by several consecutive government coalitions, regardless of their color. So this has been really important for us, also for us civil servants, to have this trust between different government coalitions that the work that has been done for sustainable development can leave over the government, the changes of the government. And that is breaking the political silos at its best, I would say. When I'm saying in many events when I have argued that we should not politicize sustainable development, I have not meant, and I don't mean that we should not need political leadership. We do need political leadership. We need the leadership of the Prime Minister, of the President, of the government. But it should not be, the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development should not be framed as a product of some political movement, because then it will be sidelined. And the continuity that I just mentioned will definitely and would definitely suffer. So I think breaking political silos is possible if you build beyond government terms, if you build on continuity, if you build on institutionalization and build the policies in a way that all the political parties feel ownership over the agenda. And it can happen. This is what our experience shows. Then if we move to the mental silos, I think that these are much more difficult because, as has already been said, people are bubbling in their comfort zones and in their like-minded groups, and it's not easy, nor desired to get out of this bubble. And I sort of recognize that feeling in myself. Mental silos easily reflect the political silos. We see the political movements and how people are bubbling around these political movements. But the mental silos are also more difficult to manage by governance methods because they are very much linked to the identity, of course, who is me to tell how to think and how to believe, and it is not the role of the government. We are living in a democracy, and this is not the way we are working, and we should not work. But how these silos can be broken down is that, again, I take this case of our National Commission for Sustainable Development. For almost 28 years, we have engaged in this societal learning process within the National Commission, where we have 57 members from all spheres of the society. We have the government in place, we have the members of the parliament, we have municipalities, industrial groups, NGOs, and so forth. So we have had this continuous dialogue, and we have not been afraid of conflicts. We have not been afraid of not being in agreement. And I think this is also something that once you understand that you can have a very fruitful discussion and not come into a conclusion that everybody can agree on, is also quite flourishing, I would say. And I have also seen that in this societal learning, it has taught us all to see things through sustainable development lenses. So not with environment lenses or agriculture lenses or finance lenses or, you name it. But really, when these people have gathered together for a longer time, they start to see things through sustainable development, SDG lenses. And that is also already a one step away from this mental silo and helps us forward. And softening the mental silos will also have an effect on institutional ones. People start to understand the point of others, what the others are thinking and why they are thinking that way and why they are doing it in that way. And this brings me to the last silo, institutional silo, which is of course the most close one to me, to maybe all of us who are dealing with sustainable development policies in public administration. And in Finland, we have had, a long history of building bridges between the sectors and line ministries. We have, of course, the National Commission, but we have also the Interministerial Network Secretariat, where we have focal points from each and every ministry to work for a common understanding, common interpretation of the 2030 agenda in Finland in our governance. And of course, the SDGs have provided a big challenge how to engage ministries in the 2030 agenda as a whole, not just in one or two SDGs. And I've realized that when we are reporting, like when we reported to the United Nations this year in form of the voluntary national review, of course we use the sector, the line ministries to report on their own sort of SDG. But when we are designing our policies and plans, we are not, breaking the SDGs into silos. So we ask all the ministries to design all the SDGs because we need to look them as an integrated whole. And my last point, of course, you need to do things in a pragmatic way. I mean, breaking the institutional silos, I do agree that we need these institutional silos also, as was mentioned by Louis, but we need to also start to look things in a more coherent way. And one example in Finland has been the sustainable development budget planning. So the state budget has been designed for a couple of years now already on the basis of the, not SDGs, because that is a bit too ambitious at the moment, but on the basis of the sustainable development objectives that we have jointly defined that are in line with the SDGs. But anyway, the budget planning has brought the sectors together to also look at the resources and the resource allocation in an integrated manner. And this is just a first step now, but I believe that this is the right way forward. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anika, for these examples from breaking the different types of silos from a Finnish perspective. We are getting quite some questions in already, so while I'm organizing them here at my desk, would any of the speakers respond or have questions to other speakers in the first round? Maybe we'll just, whoever speaks up, unmute yourself and we'll try to organize it.
I have a question and a comment.
Please, Louis.
Is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
First, on Anika, I only have a comment. Of course, I'm a big fan of your work, Anika, in Finland. So many years, you never give up, and you work in a very mindful way, and that's very successful. But your story inspired me to also reflect and think about another great example within the European Commission of collaborative work, which is one of the first ones maybe. It is since almost 10 years we have for each country a so-called country team on economic governance, the European semester, which is now also on social issues and on environmental issues. In fact, they have become sustainability country teams, and every 6 weeks we meet with people from 20 different DGs. And over the years we have learned to accept each other, to respect each other, to laugh with each other, and that is an enormous silo breaker, that thing. I had a small question to our German colleague, because to Dirk, I was wondering, the example you give is very inspiring, and I wish you a lot of success with that. It looks super good. But to what extent is the fact that Germany is one of the maybe few countries where the constitution, in fact, has a silo article. Article 65 something says that federal ministers manage their own business independently and under their own responsibility, which means that legally you can always say in a German ministry, look, I don't want to work with you. I have my own business to take care of. Is that a problem that you are overcoming at the moment, or is it not? You just dance around with that?
Yes, well, in a way, you are right. But when you look at the federal construction, the strong federal construction, as Anika also said for Finland, you see that you have disparate movements. On the one hand, it says that every ministry is responsible for itself, and of course we insist on this right when we develop our programs. On the other hand, we are first of all in a political process. We are in coalitions, we are in treaties like that. So we are always forced to compromise, and this is already a part of dancing in silos. And secondly, especially when I thought about what Anika said, the reality is that we have so many stakeholders in a democratic society that are talking about topics with their interests that you're always forced to bring the silos to dance. So on the one hand, you are right, formally. On the other hand, if you look at the political reality, we are already at on the dance floor.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panel? Otherwise, I move to a question that I already had on my radar, and we also saw it coming in through our audience. That's kind of, well, let's frame it in a dancing metaphor. Some people need an audience around them to perform well on the dance floor. They thrive on this pressure to do well, to show off their skills, their elegance. Others like dancing as such, but will never dare a complex tango, not even a slow Swedish tango, when there's an audience watching, when there's people making noise at the bar, or even strolling over the dance floor. So in non-metaphor wording, and taking some of the cues from my question cards that I got here, how do you see the role of stakeholders, NGOs, other interest groups, academia, media, or yes, I have to mention it, in-house consultants, or as one of the questions asked, activist organizations in this challenge of interdepartmental efforts? Do they help? Do they hamper? We got some few cues out of all three presentations already a bit, but maybe if you could all elaborate briefly, 1 minute on the topic, if possible. I would like to start then with Anika, especially as chair of a multi-stakeholder partnership. I'm sure this is not a new question to you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good question, and I have actually had some very interesting conversations with my NGO friends on this issue, and we are actually quite in an agreement that the stakeholders are also siloed. So they are not beyond this challenge. They build their own environmental silos, development silos, consumer silos, girls and women's movement silos. So this is like a whole of society challenge to bring everybody in the same dance floor. Of course, sometimes some stakeholders, their existence is belonging on an integrated approach. So they don't have like one interest to defend only, and that is of course sometimes very useful in negotiations or conversations or in our societal learning processes, that they can actually bring in some synergies, like solutions that already include some synergistic aspects. But this is not just a public administration challenge. That would be my point. And we should all learn how to dance with the silos. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anika. I can only second that observation from my own work in the UN arenas, that the NGOs are at least as siloed as the public administration. Dirk Meyer, would you also like to comment on this question? You already mentioned Fridays for Future, so.
Yes, very shortly. I agree to Anika saying that especially stakeholders very often follow one interest and therefore they are captured, of course, in silos in a special way. I think what bringing them to dance means is to develop, to construct rooms, spaces, sometimes without publicity, where different stakeholders, maybe very opposite stakeholders, could talk together about a problem and discover their, as we say it, red lines and how far they could go with their groups. We tried this in the beginning of the climate policy. We had special organizations that brought together, especially, for instance, stakeholders from the energy-intensive industries and NGOs from the climate movement. We had no public spheres, but where they could talk to each other, where the red lines are, and they discovered where maybe common solutions could be. And that was very helpful for us in the administration to see where we could organize movements, or in the picture where we could offer new floors for dancing between silos.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Louis, any additions to those?
Similar comments, but I think you could see these different roles also as different roles in any team. If you work together, then there are different roles, not only the role of the chair or there could be some people in a team are more better in focusing, others are more in unfocusing, some are more in knowledge, others in new ideas. And you could also, when trust grows in a collaboration, you can also more easily switch roles now and then. And then I also agree with the comments made on stakeholders. If NGOs or other stakeholders want to really participate and co-create, and they also need to realize that they should do more than advocacy. They should then also take the co-responsibility, and that is something that is a difficult thing sometimes. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I have another question that was addressed to Anika Lindblom directly on the the question is, what is the advantage of avoiding politicization? It could be argued that the time is up to leave the topic to the back rooms, especially if the institutionalization has not yet taken place. That was the question. Would you have a comment to that? Why the advantage of avoiding politicization?
Yeah, I think that has been one of the reasons why Finland has been one of the only countries in the world that has been able to maintain the National Commission for Sustainable Development without interruption for almost 30 years with the leadership of the Prime Minister from different political parties, because it has, of course, there are different priorities or different political tendencies that around sustainable development during each and every government term. But the vision and the long-term, vision and objectives already before the 2030 agenda, which has now, of course, brought in some more coherence and some more institutional background, even more. But already before that, I believe that if we had not managed to keep sustainable development as neutrality is not a good word, I would say, because of course sustainable development is very much on values and on objectives, on quantitative and qualitative targets, and they are never neutral, but But we have managed to bring this evidence-based, knowledge-based, participatory approach that has been legitimized by each and every government, regardless of the color of the government. And without that, I would say that sustainable development would have had sidelined to be just some project in the Environment Ministry or Ministry for Foreign Affairs. But now we have been able to keep it running. And this has also helped us, the civil servants, to build policy coherence, to build long-term strategies for sustainable development, because we have not been forced to be afraid that the next government will just, bury the old strategy because it was something that was done during the previous government term. So there are many, many benefits, and it's a thin line sometimes, but it's worth defending.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I pick up one of your words you mentioned as kind of a project in the environmental ministry. That's exactly where another question targets it at. That's for Dirk Meyer. The question from the audience, do you think the coordination of the ambitious aims should be set up at the BMU, so the Federal Ministry of the Environment, or possibly at a ministry with allegedly more power or incentive structures like the Finance Ministry? That goes back, I think, to the question of who is the dance teacher and coordinates the dances. I know it's a question that in academia is often raised, but would you like to comment? Otherwise, I move it to Louis. Dirk.
No, actually, in the beginning, we thought that it might have been a better idea to place this coordination unit in the Chancellor's office, to give it more power and to give it a bit of that what Anika just mentioned. On the other hand, we know that it is an old tradition in German administration not to have this kind of programs in the Chancellor's office, but in the specialized ministries. And therefore we took it, and we took it as a target which we fulfill, of course, with a lot of courage. As it is a decision of the entire government, we feel strong enough to push the topic forward. But we will see at the end whether this is successful or not. What I think, just let me add this, the uprising idea in a lot of governments to focus much more on the budget planning in order to bring sustainability cross over all ministries and bring the silos to dance. I think this is one of the coming up very interesting instruments in the future, and therefore the ministries for finance get much more involved in the topic and becoming the silo teacher.
Thank you very much. Louis, do you have any further comments to any of those questions before I start my last question and wrapping up?
Okay, one addition to the last question, I fully agree that the ministries of finance are getting more and more important, and that SDG budgeting is extremely important, but also sustainable procurement and these kind of things. So I would gradually indeed trust finance ministries to be also in the lead. The Prime Minister being in the lead for the SDGs, I always have found that the exception of the rule that there are no best practices. That is more or less a best practice, I think. But still, it doesn't mean when the coordination is central, it doesn't mean that it creates much leverage. So maybe the finance ministry or maybe a group of 3 ministries could do the lead. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. My last question very quickly, also in terms of dancing metaphors. If I go to dance, I'll bring my dancing shoes. they are prerequisites for me to move even the simplest steps, and they make me look good. So in non-metaphor wording, what kind of bureaucrats do we need? What do they need to bring, especially those that come new to the job from university? Just solid knowledge of issues and procedures, or maybe experience from outside bureaucracy, different departments, or what this festival is all about, do they have to bring creativity? Please, very short, if possible, from every one of you. I would like to start with Dirk Meyer, please. If you have an idea, what do they need to bring? Creativity?
Yes, my idea is quite clear. I'm connecting with the question of mental silos. And when we get new people into our ministries, we look for mentally open people who are able to collaborate, who are open to understand what the position of another one is. So we need people like this all over the administration, because they are the people with whom we have to work together.
Thank you. Anika?
Yes, very much agree with Dirk, and maybe add that good communication skills, because learning how to dance with silos and anything is much about communication and being able to listen and to inspire others to work together and co-create new solutions. Thank you.
And Louis, if you can manage in a few seconds.
Yes. Okay. No, the change that is needed to teach silos to dance, to make silos dance, has also to do with accepting risks and so daring to take risks. So create environments wherein it is safe to do things a little bit differently than yesterday or in the past. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have 1 minute left to thank my colleagues in the Düsseldorf office. Jule Plawitsky-Bayer will help me moderating and the questions. My colleagues in the Berlin office and the team that's going to hold the workshop immediately after this one. And I have to thank Pauline Bols, our producer, in-house producer, who made this session possible, and many others, and did an excellent job in a very complex environment. Thank you, Pauline. And last but not least, I don't know how to do a standing online ovation to our inspiring speakers, but hartelijk dank, Louis, Kiitos, Anika, and dankeschön, Dirk. And with that, to the audience, enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.